and good day in algebra. We are continuing our work with CO39 part 2, given a situation, writing the system ourselves and then solving. And the first three that we did yesterday were all kind of set up similarly, okay? The ones we're going to talk about today are a little bit different. Same idea, but just a little bit thought process to get to that system. So we've got Michelangelo. We're debating whether that's the turtle or the artist. But whoever it is, spends $16 on tubes of paint and disposable brushes for an art project. Each tube of paint costs $3, and each disposable brush costs 50 cents. Michelangelo purchases twice as many brushes as tubes of paint. Find the number of brushes and tubes of paint that he purchases. Okay. First of all, how do we know this is a system? That this will require two equations for us to write rather than just one. Gabby. There are two variables, which means we need two equations, okay? And so step one, we started with this yesterday, is we are going to identify exactly what those variables are. What are we solving for, okay? There's no question here. I said in the last one, look for the question mark. But here, find the number of brushes and tubes of paint. That's still telling us what we're looking for. So we'll have B for brushes. And we'll use T for tubes. T for tubes of paint. Okay. The second step is to identify our totals. And like we talked about briefly before recording, right? We have that quantity equation and we have the value equation. Okay. And in this particular case, the value total is very, very clear. What's the value total? Brent? 16. Okay. 16, that's going to be the cost. And this is our value equation. So something is going to equal 16. What's our other total? And this is why I didn't give this one to you for homework yesterday, because it's a little bit different than the other ones we did. Josh? 32. How do you get 32? And so you're doubling 16 to get 32? Well, so this equation here is our value. That 16 has to do with the cost of things. The other total that we're looking for has to do with our quantity. And we can't really mix the two. That 16 being dollars is a different unit than the quantity of tubes and brushes. So you're right, though. That statement is pretty important. Michelangelo purchases twice as many brushes as tubes of paint. As it turns out, that's our second equation, just written in the verbal form. There's no direct total here. And so this is an example of a system where it's an indirect total, where that your second equation is given to you just verbally. So we need to figure out, how are we going to represent Michelangelo purchases twice as many brushes as tubes of paint? Julia, no? Audrey? 2B or not to be? That is the question. Sorry. I don't get that often. Don't write this down yet. But we have 2B equals T, or twice as many brushes equals tubes of paint. The other option that you could be thinking, some of you maybe, or is it 2T equals B? Twice the tubes of paint equals the brushes. And if you're ever in a situation where you're unsure, okay, we can always make a function table or a BT table here, right, to help us. Again, don't write this down yet, okay? But if we have 2B equals T and we buy one brush, how many tubes of paint is that going to mean that we buy? Yeah, two. Okay. What if we buy 3 brushes? How many tubes of paint? Anybody? 6. And if we buy 15 brushes, how many tubes of paint? 30. Okay. If we do the same thing over here with tubes of paint and brushes, and say if we buy 1 tube of paint, that's 2 brushes. If we buy 3 tubes of paint, that's 6 brushes. If we buy 15 tubes of paint, that's 30 brushes. We can go back to our verbal and say Michelangelo purchases twice as many brushes as tubes of paint. Which one's correct? Brent?
2t equals b.
Yeah, 2t equals b. Okay? And we can see that because kind of going through both options, 2b equals t, 2t equals b, if you kind of lay it out and say, let's take some examples and test this, we can see that it's going to be 2t equals b. Okay? Twice as many brushes as tubes of paint. So, our second equation, 2t equals b. Again, an indirect total, okay? But it's there in that verbal. Let's go back to our value equation. What equals the $16? Noah? Sorry? No, t plus b, that's our quantity, which in this case is not t plus b, okay? Because we have that relationship. Elise? 3t plus 0.5b. $3 for each brush. Remember that word each? That's kind of identifies that as a coefficient. Okay? It is attached to that variable. So each tube of paint costs, is this each? Each tube of paint costs $3 and each disposable brush costs 50 cents. Okay? So $3 per tube plus 50 cents per brush equals 16. And now we're at the solving point. And even though this second equation here, this 2t equals b, was kind of annoying to find, a little more challenging, it's nice in the sense that we already have one variable isolated. We don't have to do anything extra here because we already know that b is equal to 2t. So we can take that value for b and plug it in for b in our other equation. So a little more work to find, but then we don't have any adjustments that need to be made here. So 3t plus 0.5 times 2t equals 16. Three t plus half of 2t is just 1t. 3t plus one more t is 4. And t is equal to 4. And if Michelangelo purchases twice as many brushes as tubes of paint, if he purchased 4 tubes of paint, our value for b is 8. And we can plug these values in to our value equation also. 3 or 4 tubes of paint at $3 a piece, that's $12 plus 50 cents per brush. Okay, 8 brushes, that's $4, and 12 plus 4 is 16. It checks out. Questions on this one? Soybe?
How did you get B?
How do you get B?
Yeah.
If he purchased twice as many brushes as tubes of paint, once I found T, I plugged T in for T in my other equation, and 2 times 4 gave me B, which is 8. Anything else? Okay, let's look at the next one with Lily and her nickels and her dimes. This is another example of an indirect total question. It says Lily collected $2.75 in nickels and dimes. 10 less than twice the number of nickels represents the number of dimes she has. How many of each kind of coin did Lily collect? Let's start with our variables. What do we want to use here? Soybe. Sure. N for nickels and D for dimes. Okay. Step 2. Give me a total. Gabby. $2.75, which refers to the value, right? This is going to be our value equation. So let's go ahead and start with that one. What equals $2.75? How can we write this? What makes that total of 275? Brent? So this being value, we have to think about that monetary value here. Just the equation N plus D, nickels plus dimes, that's more of a quantity. How many nickels, how many dimes? We need to attach some value here. Remember that value equation is where we're going to get our coefficients. Okay? Because we're assigning value to the object that we have. Try it again, Brent.
0.5 N and 0.1 D.
And why 0.5?
5 cents.
What's the decimal value of 5 cents though? 0.05. Okay, a nickel is worth 0.05. Right, a dime is worth 0.1 or 0.10. Okay. Sometimes, and don't write this down, I've seen this in the past, which I'm glad you didn't do, was put like 5N plus 10D. What do the 5 and the 10 represent there value-wise? Dollars, right? If every nickel was worth $5 and dime $10, I'd be rich, okay? But they're not. What's that? The economy would crash? Well, maybe. I'm not an economist. Okay, so we have 0.05 N, the value of a nickel. Every nickel that we have is worth 5 cents, plus 0.10 per dime. Okay, if we have 3 dimes, 0.1 times 3 is 0.3. 3 dimes is 30 cents. Okay, that value there. Now we get to the other equation, that quantity. Julia. Where do you get that? 2n minus 10 equals d. Where does that come from? Right, that verbal statement. Here, 10 less than twice the number of nickels represents how many dimes she has. Okay, and we've seen these phrases like this before, all the way back in CO6, where we went from the verbal to the algebraic. Okay, that phrase less than does mean subtraction, and twice the number does mean multiply by 2, but why is it not 10 minus 2n? Why is it 2n minus 10? Because you're right, it is 2n minus 10. But if it's written in that order, why do we switch it? Yeah.
Because like you put the coefficient first.
Okay, when it's attached to a variable, not really the reason why here. Julia? It goes back to that phrase less than, right? That if you remember back in CO6, we starred the less than phrase because when you see that less than, the order is actually the opposite of how we say it verbally. 10 less than twice the number means we're starting with 2n, and we're taking 10 less than that, we're subtracting 10 from it. Okay, so it's that verbiage there. But yes, 2n minus 10 equals d is the correct answer. Okay. My goodness, we have 28 minutes left. We're already ready to assign homework here. Wow. Okay, so your homework for tomorrow is to finish this question here. We've got the equations written, so you just need to solve it. How many nickels, how many dimes? And then the other one I want you to do is down the page a little bit. This one sounds a lot like how I'm going to be when my kids get to have parties and stuff like that. It says, you are planning a party and your dad kindly offers to go to the store for you to buy beverages. When you call him to find out how much he bought, he gives you a math riddle. He says he bought some 2-liter bottles of pop and some packs of water, each pack containing 6 bottles. He bought a total of 70 items, which represents the individual bottles of pop and the individual bottles of water. So 70 individual bottles total. The bottles of pop are $4.25 each, and the water is $6.60 per pack, and you paid a total of $127.40. And you're only going to get this stuff if you can tell me how many bottles of pop and how many bottles of water did he buy for the party. You can't answer this, and I keep everything.
Wait, that means
Okay.
you keep the homework?
No, you do the homework. This is for... Okay, so your homework is to finish that question on the nickels and dimes, and now here with your dad's math riddle. Okay, and we're going to skip this question down here. No brain buster for CO39, and that wraps up CO39. We'll jump into PO40 either tomorrow or Friday. So, anything for me? Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, comments, congratulations, or criticisms? Yes.
I don't think anyone's dad would give them a math riddle to solve.
Really? Any of you think that any of your parents would give you a math riddle, something like this?
No.
Just for funsies? No?
My mom would not.
I totally would. I totally will, not would, will. Khan Academy is due tomorrow night. Don't forget about that. If you finish this early, which you likely will have ample work time today, you can work on some Khan if that's not finished yet. If you've got practice work, retakes you want to do, we can morph it into a retake day today, especially for you geography folk that don't get a lot of time. So that's an option, or whatever else you've got going on, you can work on that too. What's that? We'll see where the day takes us. But anyway, if that's all you've got for me, if that's all I've got for you, with gusto, that's how you math.